Every human society has to solve the exact same organizational problem: how to extract and pool resources to govern, protect, and reproduce itself. Modern economics usually measures that extraction in dollars and cents, but looking purely at money misses the actual historical variable: who controls a person's productive time and under what conditions society can claim a piece of it. Social organization relies on four major forms of contribution: money, time, skill, and knowledge. Yet modern fiscal systems are built almost entirely around that first variable. We monetize labor through wages, then extract a portion to fund the state. But outside of the formal market, millions of hours are spent caring for elderly relatives, organizing neighborhoods, and maintaining local environments. None of that activity generates a wage, which means it rarely appears on a tax return. By building a collective system that only recognizes monetary extraction, we leave a massive reserve of organizational capacity completely unpriced and largely invisible. Think about the specific tasks that keep a community functioning: mentoring youth, preserving local culture, managing community gardens, and providing emergency assistance. Standard economic accounting struggles with this. If you spend 2 hours paying a commercial service for care, it is measured as economic production. If you spend 2 hours helping an elderly neighbor, the human benefit is identical, but the market value is zero. To fix this blind spot, we need a different metric. We can measure the relationship between personal time and collective obligation through a framework called human time ownership. This framework relies on 3 variables: the freedom you have to decide if your time will be contributed, the control you retain over where and how it is used, and the social recognition you receive for doing it. At the lowest end of this spectrum, a person is treated as the property of another, yielding zero ownership of their own time. At the highest end, a free individual makes a voluntary contribution and receives recognized civic credit. Unlocking society's unpriced collective contributions requires mastering the mechanics of human time ownership without regressing into historical systems of coercion. Historically, state capacity relied on direct appropriation of the person. Massive infrastructure was built not by taxing income, but by physically commanding productive time. Later states refined this into corvée. Authorities required citizens to provide specified days of public labor to build roads, bridges, and fortifications. It is tempting to look at a system where you work instead of paying money and see it as a relief from taxation. But historically, working for the state was a direct tax levied on human time. Colonial systems relied on these labor tax regimes. Administrations used compulsory work as a hidden fiscal resource to extract commodity production and maintain physical control. Modern state development moved away from coercion through monetary obligation. States demanded a cash equivalent rather than a person's time, relying on free wage labor. If a government requires $1,000 in tax rather than 10 days of forced labor, it no longer dictates where, when, or how those 10 days are spent. This decouples individual productive choices from collective resource collection. Today, highly redistributive welfare states rely almost entirely on monetary extraction. They provide universal services funded by high monetary taxation, not direct public labor. Human progress historically meant replacing compulsory labor obligations with monetized taxation. Any future civic innovation must protect that achievement, rather than reverse it. We map this onto a grid: individual control over time and social recognition. Coercive regimes sit left. The free market sits bottom right, offering low recognition for unpaid work. This leaves an empty upper right quadrant: high autonomy combined with high social recognition. Highly monetized welfare states don't occupy this space because they tax income, not time. Pure market economies miss it because they only value what carries a price tag. Reaching this quadrant requires an institutional architecture that formally recognizes civic value without stripping away the individual's right to control their own schedule. We can fill this quadrant using a voluntary tax time bank model. Under this model, citizens retain absolute ownership of their time, but if they choose to, they can exchange qualified, socially productive hours for bounded tax credits. We can define this precisely. Your final obligation equals total tax liability minus verified civic hours multiplied by a standard recognized value, and adjusted by a weighting factor. The C-max variable caps the tax offset. Civic time credits must complement monetary taxation, never fully replace it. A progressive cap ensures that governments still collect the monetary resources required for infrastructure and debt obligations. It also prevents wealthy individuals from erasing their tax liabilities with a few hours of volunteer work. Second, time bank labor has to create additional social value. A government cannot systematically displace paid public sector jobs, like public librarians, dedicated school teachers, or environmental workers. Third, and most importantly, participation has to be a true choice. A citizen who logs 0 civic hours must retain fundamental rights, healthcare access, and welfare eligibility. They simply pay their normal monetary tax. These strict negative constraints are the only things stopping a seemingly progressive time bank from degrading into a coercive modern corvée. By designing the tax time bank this way, we transform how individuals connect to the collective, building a dual pathway system. The first pathway is the traditional monetary state. You provide labor, earn a wage, pay a tax, and generate public capacity. The second pathway runs parallel. You volunteer time, generate direct social capacity, and earn a civic credit. Tax reduction is just one application. The credit also functions as intertemporal social reciprocity. A 40-year-old contributing 300 hours to assist elderly residents can retain a portion of those verified credits, allowing them to receive community care 35 years later. This mechanism effectively creates a time-denominated social pension, turning localized community volunteering into a durable intergenerational contract. Historically, states appropriated time through force. Then they monetized it through taxes. Today, we can reintroduce time as a voluntary, recorded social asset. Traditional authority appropriated resources from subjects. Modern democracy, at its best, asks citizens to supply resources to a collective system that returns security, infrastructure, and social protection. Implementing a civic time bank broadens this relationship into a plural civic economy. Money, skill, knowledge, and voluntary time are all formally recognized as distinct, non-interchangeable pillars of a functioning society. The primary governing role of this economy is that there can be no compulsory ownership of citizens' time. Citizens must always retain maximum freedom to choose how they contribute and receive fair public recognition when they voluntarily do so. By refusing to command human time, society can finally capture its massive latent civic value without sacrificing centuries of hard-won labor freedom.